We'll get started, and I think Senator Sieben and Senator Hayden will join us shortly. As with most economic forecasts, the spin starts quickly and the rush is on to claim credit or to cast blame. But it's really the facts that speak loudest today. Our economy is growing, which is great news. More jobs are being created, new businesses are opening, and our budget continues to be balanced. And that's all good news for the people of Minnesota. First of all, today we can tell the people of Minnesota that after years and years and billions in borrowing, we have finally paid the bill that we owe to our schools in full. And paying back our schools is a victory for Minnesota kids and for our future. In addition, our commitment to responsible budgeting is paying off. For a decade, Minnesota backed itself in a corner with short-term budget fixes and shifts and gimmicks which limited the choices we had to make the investments we need to make in Minnesota's middle class. We committed to truly balancing the budget in 2013 as one of our top priorities, and the result is that we now have choices. We have a chance to look ahead, the ability to make decisions that are going to benefit middle-class Minnesotans for the long term, and I think that is really critically important. We should pause and thank all the hardworking Minnesotans and all the innovative businesses that made this progress possible, because it's really a credit to the work that they've done to get our economy in the shape that it is, really leading the nation in so many ways. But we can't pause too long because there's still a lot of work to do. Our economy is showing signs of progress, but there are still too many Minnesotans who haven't felt it. We need to do more to continue to expand economic opportunities and to grow our middle class. The next session, it's our plan to stay focused on growing Minnesota's economy and growing it the Minnesota way. Keep expanding economic opportunities, including raising the minimum wage, and continuing to put our priority on middle-class Minnesotans ahead of special interests. The good news is that we are in a situation now where Minnesota's economy is strong. We have a balanced budget. We have choices that we can make to help Minnesotans, but we clearly need to keep our eye on the ball and work together to build on this momentum for the benefit of Minnesota's future. Representative Murphy.
Thank you, and good afternoon. And you'll hear a familiar refrain. Today's good news is reason for hope for Minnesota and for our future, though I think it is premature to throw a ticker tape parade. I want to thank Minnesotans across the state for their hard work to rebuild our economy since the 2008 crash. And while it hasn't reached every person in the state, I think there's a lot of reason for optimism. We remain committed to a strong middle class in Minnesota and economic opportunity for all Minnesotans. And our focus remains on the bread and butter issues that drive our economy: a world-class education, economic innovation, and good-paying jobs, building on our strengths in Minnesota, such as agriculture, manufacturing, healthcare, and biotechnology. At times over the past few years, I felt like a broken record talking about our need to pay back the school shift, to commit to making that promise to Minnesotans. And so hearing that we have finally done that, and it's something that we insisted upon, is really music to my ears. It's good that we're able to make good on this debt that we owed our kids, and it's great news for Minnesota kids, for parents, for educators, and of course for our schools here across Minnesota. So I want to thank them. I want to thank educators and parents and Minnesotans for making education a top priority for our state. Minnesotans have valued in our past and continue to value education. They understand its importance in our future, and they understand it's important for their kids and their economic future, their ability to succeed. And you're seeing, I think, the result of that commitment from Minnesotans in the budget that we passed. And now, rather than worry about how we pay our overdue bills to the schools, we can close that book and focus on our future, and we can begin to plan for the future, planning forward, which will help Minnesota grow stronger. Minnesota's economic outlook is strong, and our economic revival gives us reason for optimism. We have a lot of work ahead of us. We have a lot of work to meet the challenges that face us, the challenges that are our future. And today we're happy to be one step closer. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon. I'm Katie Sieben, and it's a pleasure to see so many of you here today. I first would like to just take an opportunity to thank the House leadership and the governor, as well as Senator Bach, who's not here, for the tremendous unity that we've shown in passing a budget this last session that has brought us to this point today. The forecast shows how the honest budget passed by the DFL legislature and the governor that did not include accounting shifts or gimmicks has created the confidence and stability necessary for our strong growth that we've seen here in Minnesota. The economy continues to build momentum, and the strong economic forecast today confirms that the structurally balanced budget passed by the legislature has put the state on stable economic footing for the first time in a long number of years. I certainly echo what Representative Murphy says, that this is also a really great day for Minnesota schools. We paid back the totality of the shift, will be paid back in total, and that is good news for Minnesota parents and Minnesota educators who have been through a lot in previous years based on those accounting shifts. I think as we think, though, of how this news impacts Minnesotans, we need to look back at the budget that we passed. So it certainly means more stability for Minnesota families. When you look to families who are faced with pain, that previously were faced with paying between $2,000 to $5,000 in tuition fees to send their children to all-day kindergarten, Minnesota families know that next year they'll be able to put those dollars to use elsewhere to help the economy. Likewise, when you look at the tuition cap that was passed for MnSCU and the University of Minnesota, Minnesota families will be able to anticipate and plan for that tuition bills will not rise. Similarly, Minnesota businesses will be able to tap into some of the additional monies that was passed by the legislature and the governor for the Minnesota Investment Fund. So as businesses are looking to expand and grow in Minnesota, they'll be able to tap those dollars from the additional dollars that we passed for the Minnesota Investment Fund. So although there's great news today, I think that the message that we want to convey is this is also good news for Minnesotans' pocketbooks and for Minnesota consumers. With that, I'll turn it over to my friend and colleague, Senator Hayden.
I don't have, thank you guys for being here. I don't have much more to add other than, and I think you guys have been here a while and have heard the cautious optimism that we have and around our budget, the Speaker, the Majority Leader, my colleague. I think that we just need to continue to stay the course. We need to continue to have these honest budgets, this great conversation with Minnesotans. I think that they are with us in terms of understanding that we are going to come here and we're going to get in, do the people's work, and then we're going to get out and be about, you know, the business of growing Minnesota. So, you know, I could go on and talk about, you know, all the various aspects of the budget that we thought were fantastic. Our investment in early childhood, all-day kindergarten, and what we hope to do in the future to continue to invest in Minnesota. But I think you've heard those today, and I think we'll welcome any questions that you might have.
Much has been said today about the improving Minnesota economy. Are you seeing it in inner city neighborhoods that were hit especially hard? Has the legislature done enough to spur development and growth in those neighborhoods? You know,
I think that, you know, the inner city communities that I represent, I see Senator Champion is here and others and, that are here, Representative Murphy and others. I think we see that the recovery is always a little slower. They often say that sometimes when middle class gets a cold, lower income people, especially communities of color, get pneumonia. So it's a slower pathway, but we are really focused on that. I think that our investment in education is continuing. That conversation that has been tough is something that we're talking about. I do feel like some of the great investments that we're making in our capital improvement, big projects with the mandates that are there to ensure that everyone gets an opportunity is going to help. So I feel optimistic about it, though the recovery is always a little slower when you're at the lower end of the spectrum.
What do you guys think about the governor's idea about using a large share of this money for tax relief? He talked specifically about doing the B2B, getting rid of those, and then federal tax conformity. And if those two are taken together, it eats up a large share of the balance that's left over. What are your thoughts about that? You guys have a lot at stake at the coming session.
Well, I think, first of all, the warning that Commissioner Showalter and the governor both gave about waiting until the February forecast to see if this is sustained is the really critical thing right now. But we are certainly, we actually passed, as you know, the federal tax conformity in the House last session. Those that's a middle class tax cut that we think makes some sense. But we have to look at the whole totality of all the choices that are in front of us. And I think that again is the really important thing. Instead of being in a position we've been essentially since I've been here in the legislature, which is having to balance deficits and to deal with a number of really bad choices. Right now we have some choices we can make, and what we're going to be focused on is figuring out what are those things that long term are going to make the biggest difference to grow our economy, to make sure that middle class families, that the middle class is growing and getting bigger and bigger.
You didn't mention the business-to-business taxes?
No, that would be clearly one of those options that we'll be considering as well. Yes.
How about fixing the governor's mansion? I don't know if you heard, he said today part of the roof fell in.
I didn't hear that. So, see, we have ability to make several choices, right?
We've heard a lot today about this is a different kind of budget opportunity to deal with. Talk a little bit more, if you would, to anyone about what it's been like for the last 10 years of recession, and now you are here, and you did some things that were controversial over the last couple of years, but you're here now.
Right. Well, and I think that's a really good way to phrase the question is we're here now, and what do we look like? What do things look like going forward instead of kind of looking backward? And I think that's why this is in some senses a really exciting opportunity. What I would say though is what we've been forced to do because we've been backed into this corner is make short-term decisions. And really, how are we going to get through the next 2 years? How are we going to get through the next 8 months, whatever it is. And now we can actually look and do the job that we really should be doing, which is what do we want to look like 5 and 10 years from now, and what can we do today to make sure that we can get there. And I think that's why this sets us up in a very different situation. And that's what we really said coming into the 2013 session. One of the reasons we made a responsible budget our top priority is because we haven't been able to make those kind of decisions. And this sets the framework, sets the framework for us, allowing us to do that. I don't know if anybody else wants to take that one. Okay.
Are you guys worried about tamping down expectations now that there's money on the table? $825 million, but probably 4 or 5 times that in requests that will come your way.
Well, I mean, that's why, first of all, we need to see what happens in February, and then that's a discussion we're going to have. But, the way that I think that we're going to be looking at those choices is through the lens of what's going to be better for growing Minnesota's middle class and doing those things that will make sure that happens now and into the future. Katie, did you want to?
Well, I would just add on to what the speaker said and echo something that hasn't been talked about, at least up here, a whole lot, is that there's still room to grow our reserves, too. And so to avoid the ups and downs that we've seen previously, I think that will be a priority of the Senate, is to look at ways that we can build up our rainy day reserves so that we're not in a similar situation in the future.
Will your caucus, Senator, support the repeal of the B2B taxes that the governor proposed?
It's too early to say. I think that we'll want to look at the February forecast and look at get those more up-to-date numbers before those decisions are made.
All right. Thank you.